You know, everyone always gets on me for my thumbnails. And I mean, what's the deal? I mean, they're beautiful. There's some beautiful thumbnails. Come on, you have to agree. It's that blank, you know the drill at this point. But a more underrated subset of thumbnails on this channel are the Is It Possible collection. This video falls into that category, but not in the way you'd probably think on a surface level. The first time I used this thumbnail style was in my video about Ultra Custom Night, because the whole draw there was, can you beat the max mode of that game? The answer is 100% no, by the way. I will be in my grave before a human being is somehow able to beat that insanity. The second time this thumbnail style was used was my first video in Tyke & Son's 1422 mode. Pretty simple explanation there. That whole video was about raising the question of if it was possible to beat that challenge at all, since after years of the game being out, no one had done it before. And finally, we have the subject of this video. Today, we're talking all about the recently released FNAF fan game called Post Shift 2. But unlike the other videos with this thumbnail style, today we're not talking about a max mode or a hard challenge. No. Today I raise the question, is it possible to beat Post Shift 2 without losing your sanity?
2 will be shocked with immediate effect if
no return.
No return. Play!
Holy fuck. Go find him right now.
Go find him right now! He is not here. I'm dead. 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 Why? Why is this fucking stupid?
Oh my god. It's so annoying. Oh my god. What the fuck?
Apparently, One Eye simply doesn't spawn there where Freddy spawns.
Oh, okay. Good
So
to
just
know.
don't go there.
You got that, Phil?
He's got that, don't worry.
Okay. What is going on? Oh my god. What is happening?
I'm done
Oh my God.
literally smashing my fucking head against the desk.
Yeah, I'm gonna give that one a big fat no. So where do I even start with this one? You're all probably expecting another video where I explain all the mechanics and go over what makes them good, bad, fun, whatever. But I literally can't do that with this game. Well, I could, but we'd be here forever. Post Shift 2 is a game that has 4 unique gameplay styles, literal pages and pages of mechanics, and is one of the most unbalanced and baffling experiences to hit the FNAF fan game scene in a long time. If I were to go over all the mechanics in this game, I would essentially just be reading all the tutorials, which this game has a lot of. So no, today we are not going the usual route I take when it comes to FNAF fan game videos, because if I did, we would unironically be here for longer than my sister location video, which I would rather not edit another hour-long video, so we will not be doing that. Instead, I'm going to be explaining the lore around the release of Post Shift 2. What happened the day it came out, why it was taken down only 5 hours after it came out on Halloween night, the aftermath of the game being taken down, the 12-hour live stream I did with Phisnom, watching him play the entire game, and finally, an interview with the creator of the game himself, RJack25, to get to the bottom of some of the mysteries surrounding the release of Post Shift 2. So strap in, everybody. This is going to be one of my craziest videos yet. By the end of this, you will all know the truth about Post Shift 2. But first, a little background. RJack25 has been a prominent member of the FNAF fan game scene for a hot minute. If I were to pinpoint something he's really well known for, it would have to be his music. He's a really great composer and arranger, and has even done music for games I've already talked about, such as Tyke & Sons. However, other than music, RJack25 is actually a pretty competent one-man show. He can model, animate, code, which means that he's also put his hat in the ring and made a couple FNAF fan games on his own as well. Of course, we have the original Post Shift, the predecessor to the game we're talking about today. But he's also made some other stuff like this Baldi's Basic FNAF game. Fun fact, Markiplier played this one, that's kind of interesting. So okay, RJack has a pretty strong background in the community, and is a pretty talented guy. We should be in good hands, right? Well, in theory, we could have been in good hands here, but there were some crucial mistakes made during the development of Post Shift 2 that led to it being one of the hardest, most unfair, most insane FNAF fan games ever made. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we talk about all that, I should first go over how we even got here. Halloween night of 2022. After multiple years of waiting, Post Shift 2 is set to release. I was kind of keeping an eye on the game beforehand, if you want to call seeing the page on GameJolt for ages keeping an eye on it. At the very least, I was aware the game existed and was aware the game was coming out on Halloween. Originally, I was actually considering streaming it on the night it dropped, but I decided against it and just waited it out to see what the game was like first. So the game came out and I didn't hear anything about it for a couple hours. That was until I was made aware that after multiple hours of the game being out, only like one person was able to get past night 1. From that point onwards, my interest in the game went from not interested at all to what the hell is this thing, and how do I figure out what happened here? The first notable person who tried playing it on release night is this guy. Listen, if Google Translate can't pronounce his username, I sure as hell aren't gonna try. But you all probably know him. It's the guy who uploads a million FNAF and other trending topic game videos a day, and milks literally everything to the ground. This guy could potentially get his own video someday. There's probably some interesting stuff here. Like, would you bat an eye if it was exposed that this channel was run by an AI at this point? Now, I'm not saying it is. I know literally nothing, just speculation here. But like, would it shock you at all? Anyway, I bring up Mr. Puppet PFP because I guess they're in their streamer era now and live stream Rainbow Friends new updates or some dumb shit. I don't even know what's going on here. What in the world is Alphabet Lore Roblox horror game? Bro, what has this channel come to? Anyway, when he's not busy playing Rainbow Friends or whatever, he'll occasionally still upload and stream FNAF stuff. This was the case when Post Shift 2 came out. He hopped on stream and played the game silently for like an hour. Now, I want you all to think about this guy for a second. Let's say he's not an AI, and he's just a guy who plays all these games all day, every day, for like 8 years straight at this point. You'd expect someone who's been playing these games for that long to be able to get past night 1 of a FNAF fan game, right? However, after like an hour of streaming, he never beat night 1. He just gave up. Yes, this person or robot AI who has been playing FNAF games for 8 years could not beat night 1 of Post Shift 2. Clearly something was up here. His next stream was just him looking at the extras menu or something. I don't really know. But what it proves is that he ended up just cheating his way to the end of the game because there is a 0% chance he beat the entire game off recording. This man's entire computer activity is uploaded daily at this point. Ain't no way that happened. Unlucky for him, the jump scares aren't in the extras menu. Sadly, he will not be able to add the jump scares from this game into World of Jump Scares Part 234. I know, a moment of silence for this national tragedy. But that's just one guy, right? Surely some other streamers had more luck. Maybe they did, but from what I could tell, the farthest anybody got within those first couple hours was around night 2 or 3. I know Mr. Swing at the King made it to night 2 before pretty much anybody else, so I guess that's something. For reference here, the first person to ever beat the game fully and upload it to YouTube took around 9 hours straight. So I really don't blame anybody for giving up so fast. In this world, you either choose your sanity or you choose to play Post Shift 2. There is no in between here. Personally, I think sanity is pretty important, and beats watching a killer animatronic go on the Joe Rogan podcast and say they're gonna pull you apart limb from limb.
Once I find a way out of this forbidden chamber, I'll tear you all apart limb from limb.
But maybe that's just me. Oh yeah, maybe I should touch on the story for a second here. Okay, so you play as a guy whose name may or may not be Thomas. I'm still not sure about this. Thomas needs to like avenge the guy who you play as in Post Shift 1 by going deeper into the location and solving some mysteries, but there's these like crazy animatronics that can shapeshift, and there's a bunch of different classes of animatronics such as Revenant and Remnant and Minotaur. And did I mention the beginning of this game is literally a crazy insane killer animatronic telling you he's gonna actually murder you? No, I need to stop. I need to stop. The story of this game is too much for me, and I'm Dr. Diagnosed allergic to story in FNAF games, so we're moving on here. I'm done. So, what happened here? What made the start of this game so hard that it took people this long to get through it? For starters, the first thing that happens when you're thrown into the gameplay is you're bombarded with a million tutorials right away. Post Shift 2 is a FNAF 4 style game when it comes to movement, so to get the full tutorial, you need to slowly run around each part of the location and read what you have to do in each area. On top of that, there's a portable monitor thing with even more tutorials to read. Good rule of thumb when making a video game in general, if it opens with a Bible's worth of tutorials, there's probably an issue there, just probably. But the issues don't even stop there. Some of the tutorials are actually useless on night 1, and don't even matter until later nights. So the game is essentially gaslighting the player into worrying about things that aren't even relevant yet.
I don't think I need to worry about baby. Like, they told me to worry about baby as the first thing to, like, tell you how to do on the night, but
Phil.
Why?
Phil,
I was gonna save that. You've kind of already figured it out. I was gonna save this until you were done.
Yeah.
Baby isn't on this night. The game just...
What?
Post Shift 2 does a surprising amount of gaslighting, actually. From mechanics explained on nights they don't apply to crucial gameplay mechanics just not being explained at all, the game is constantly making you think about things that don't even matter at that point. Often, animatronics will all spawn in at once, and because of the slow movement of your character, you can get into actual impossible situations. For example, one of the Freddys, yes, there are multiple Freddys, forces you to look at him and run all the way back to the end of a hallway. However, if this happens while, let's say, 2 other characters decide they want to spawn in, you're pretty much screwed. Even with the vast amount of guides this game makes you read before you start the night, some extremely important mechanics just aren't explained. These are mostly audio-based ones, such as the sound Foxy makes when he spawns in, but all these things combined just create an experience that's way too overwhelming for the player. Just the sheer amount of animatronics in the first 3 nights is enough to make someone give up. On the launch version of the game, Night 1 has 2 Freddys, a Foxy, and a shape-shifting thing in a cleaning vent. Night 2 adds 3 more characters with Baby, Bonnie, and Chica. Night 3 adds 1 more character, which leads to the game having an absurd amount of shit to worry about 3 nights in. The mechanics themselves for each of the characters are also a lot to deal with. These aren't your typical FNAF mechanics. Post Shift 2 features things such as constructing a sentence to make Foxy leave, playing hide and seek, conducting a survey, and sending out a fucking drone to distract animatronics. It almost feels like 6 nights worth of content compressed into 3 nights worth of gameplay, leading to the experience feeling way too hard and completely unbalanced. It straight up feels like the game wasn't even play tested by anybody. Turns out there are actually 2 people who play tested this game, which is already a pretty low amount, but even out of the 2 people, at least one of them probably pointed out how absurd this all is, right? Did the playtesters play older versions? Are they literally god gamers? Was the feedback just ignored? Did one person play half the game and the other person play the other half? Well, I actually have the answer, but you're gonna have to wait a bit to hear it. Gotta keep stringing you all along first, then we'll get into the juicy shit. Okay. So now that you all probably understand why so many people couldn't get past part A of this game— oh right, okay, I probably should have explained this earlier, but whatever, we'll do it now, it works here. Okay, so this game is so big, and there are so many assets, that the game had to be split into 2 separate parts. We Final Fantasy VII in this bitch. So the first 3 nights are on one exe file, and the last 3 nights are on a second exe file, and you have to beat the first 3 nights to unlock the second exe. Or you can just edit the save data, but what's the fun in that, huh? Anyway. Nobody could get past part A of the game for the first couple hours it was out. RJack25 seeing all of this unfold must have been a pretty rude awakening for him. When you're developing a game with very little feedback and insight from outside sources, it can be very easy to trick yourself into thinking a game is easier than it actually is, since you already know all the mechanics and how they work to specifics. Seeing everyone shit on the game and struggling to even play the damn thing must have made him feel like he made a huge mistake releasing it. So after only around 5 hours of the game being out, RJack announced that he was taking the game off GameJolt. And just like that, multiple years of work were thrown down the toilet in 5 hours. When this happened, it made me even more curious about this whole situation. Was the game really deleted? Well, not quite. You see, if you were to go on GameJolt during the short amount of time the game was taken down, it would have been impossible to find it anywhere. It was no longer on the list of FNAF fan games on the site, and was no longer in RJack's list of published games. However, it was soon found out that if you had a link to the game page already saved, it was still accessible. So in reality, the game was actually only unlisted, but it might as well have been deleted. Let's say the game was kept unlisted forever. Other YouTubers likely would have never started playing it, which has started happening recently, and it probably would have faded away into obscurity. I mean, I still plan to make a video on it regardless, but I'm glad it's back up now, and everyone can easily download the game. In between the game getting taken down, and the game being put back up the next day, Euro, the creator of UCNVR, hopped in a Discord call with a bunch of other people on Phisnom's Discord server, and started to play the game for everyone to watch. This was my first time really watching someone play the game for a long period of time, and it was a sight to behold. After multiple hours and hours of grinding the nights out, he was finally able to beat Part A. And for pretty much every person there, this would be the first time anyone got to see Part B. Euro booted up the EXE, hopped into Night 4, and the game was completely different. Completely new mechanics, completely new animatronics, completely new environments, and more tutorials to read. So remember when I said the first half of this game feels like 6 nights of gameplay compressed into 3 nights? This just made me think that even more. Because guess what? Nights 4, 5, and 6 are all completely different from everything else in the game. Each one of these last 3 nights is a new location, new mechanics, and even more tutorials to read. Euro ended up beating Night 4, gave up in Night 5 and skipped to Night 6, read the Night 6 tutorial pages, and just gave up. Yes, unlike the other gameplay styles in the game, Night 6 has so much shit going on, it needs a dedicated 5 pages of text to explain the mechanics. Sure, most of the mechanics here are just the equivalent of closing a door in FNAF 1, but instead of clicking a button, you have to do a fucking WarioWare minigame or a Sonic Forces QuickTime event to close said door. But with the sheer amount of them on display at once, it just absolutely overwhelms literally anybody who dares attempt it. The thing that really sucks here is that I can absolutely see the potential this game has. Visually, I think it looks great. Sure, I'm not a huge fan of some of the animatronic designs, looking at you, Poop Freddy, but a lot of them I actually do like, and the environments all look fantastic. As confusing and unfair as the first 3 nights of gameplay are, they're kind of fun in a sick, twisted way, and with patches, the nights will probably be fine, good even. The potential this game has is sitting right in front of me, but Post Shift 2 just missed the mark so hard that it never reaches the heights it definitely could have given different development circumstances. After Euro gave up playing the game was shortly put back up on GameJolt with the announcement that balanced patches would be released over time. This actually goes directly against what's in the README file, but hey, at least the game would soon be in a significantly more playable state. Post Shift 2 became the talk of the town in Phisnom server, because of how crazy the game was and the circumstances around its release. This led to Phisnom himself becoming interested in the game because of all the crazy shit he was seeing secondhand. For all of you at home who don't know who Phisnom is for some reason, he's a game dev who's extremely notable in the FNAF community, thanks to his games such as A Shadow Over Freddy's, and some other game I hadn't heard about until now called FNAF Plus. Must be some underground project nobody has heard of. I don't know what this is. Anyway, this interest somehow turned into Phil inviting me on his live stream to co-host his entire playthrough of Post Shift 2. I was, of course, down to do it, but it only kicked in a bit later what I had committed to. Remember that the only full playthrough of the game on YouTube at this point was around 9 hours long. So there was a pretty high chance this stream would go longer than that. And oh boy did it. Over 12 hours across 2 different live streams all on the same day, Phisnom and me sat in a Discord call as I watched him brute force his way through the entirety of Post Shift 2. If you ever wanted to watch 2 people become slowly insane over half an entire day, the Post Shift 2 stream VOD is the stream for you. I really didn't think I had it in me to stick through the entire thing, but I did, and was able to witness one of the most satisfying wins of any FNAF fan game ever. Hey, I could keep talking about the stream myself, but I think it's only fair to let the man who actually suffered through the entire game say his piece.
Hi! I recently played Post Shift 2 with Aya and was completely broken by it live on stream. As the person behind the wheel during that 12-hour live stream, I feel compelled to share my thoughts about it to all of you. Because even though it was an utter pain to get through, and felt like I was being psychologically assaulted by it sometimes, I still feel like this was a noteworthy game that people should at least know about. The gameplay of Post Shift 2 is just the most confusing and poorly explained collection of disparate mechanics that has ever graced the FNAF game scene. Very similar to Garrett McKay's Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot in that regard. While the game starts with your typical slow build of mechanics as seen in your standard FNAF affair, the second half, also known as Part B, goes completely off the rails to offer an experience that could best be described as feeding FNAF gameplay concepts through an algorithm, forcing it to come up with new game concepts, putting those in a blender, and then passing the results through Google Translate. If you want to play this game, do it! The visuals, animations, character designs, amount of content, crazy nonsense story, and difficulty are honestly more than enough of a reason to check it out. I mean, it's free! It's a dude's years-long passion work put out there for fans to enjoy. I can't really hate that as much as I would hate, like, an actual paid product, you know what I mean? Some of the stuff in here is kind of charming in its own weird way. If you like hard games that require you to learn hyper-specific mechanics that will make you feel like a god after beating it whatever complete nonsense is thrown at you, go check out Post Shift 2. Just please don't do it the way we did it.
Oh my god.
Da 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 Also, don't play the release version. Yeah, that game still needs some patches, that's for sure. Also, just please take it slowly. Take every night as if it was a different game. Because honestly, it just kind of feels that way. Each night is pretty much a different one-night game that you might have to find the instructions for somewhere else. Because currently the game certainly did not do a good job at explaining itself. With enough updates to the tutorials, a few balance tweaks to the animatronics to make sure that they don't conflict with one another, some balance tweaks to the difficulty, I believe this could be a pretty good experience. It's just that it needed more internal playtesting before release. Think about what the player is going to experience going into your game with fresh new eyes. Biggest issues of this game stem from expecting the player to instantly click with the mechanics and remember how to jump every hoop the game wants you to jump. Something the developer may have an easy time with, but certainly not someone who just found it off of GameJolt in the new releases tab. This could have been easily averted before release by having someone outside of development play the game and seeing what their experience is like, tweaking the difficulty based off of that, you know. The tutorials themselves are also a big issue. They take the FNAF 4 approach of tutorializing the player by having text overlays on top of the gameplay before the night starts. Not only is the game flooded with these massive walls of text that leave you out of breath just by reading them, tutorials that also repeat basic information way too often and don't explain other crucial aspects of a night, tutorials that also sometimes straight up just lie to you for no reason sometimes. In the live stream, we pretty much ended up resenting these tutorials and just went to check out other videos of the game on YouTube to see how it actually worked. And guess what? After we saw some examples of the gameplay, we managed to work out the final few nights in just a couple of hours. That's reasonable, I think. At the very least, my suggestion would be to change the tutorials to something more easy to understand to my ape-like mush brain. Maybe some reference images could work, maybe a practice mode that will spawn an enemy and let you do the right steps to avoid them, that way you can learn directly about them, or really anything that's not just the FNAF equivalent of throwing the Bible at someone's head and expecting them to memorize it on impact. But yeah, like I said, this game is honestly hilarious, and even though the time I spent with it was closer to being in a saw trap than having a good time, I cannot genuinely bring myself to resent it. The developer is genuinely talented at the things he does, and I really hope that Oya agrees with me on this. Even though I also did drag him into what probably be the worst possible way of experiencing this game. Speaking of that, sorry about that.
After finally watching someone play the entire game, I really only had more questions than answers. So many things just didn't add up to me. So I only had one option. DM rjack25 on Twitter to see if he was down to do an interview. He agreed. It's time, everyone. It's time to learn the truth about Post-Shift 2. What's up with the playtesters? Did he mean to make the game as hard as it actually was on release? What was going on when he took the game down? All this and more will be answered right now. The first thing of note from my interview with rjack have to be the questions about the difficulty in playtesters. Starting from the top, I asked him if he intended the game to be as hard as it was on launch. Let's get into some of the difficulty stuff. So, the game is hard. It's very hard.
Yes.
Did you mean to make the game as hard as it was on the launch version?
No, but I think part of the big problem was that I did not have enough. I wasn't reaching out to enough people to test the game, so it was just me testing it. And because I'd been playing it for like so long, it felt easy to me. But obviously, I needed to get other people to test it because it is absolutely ridiculous with the RNG, and I know that.
So that was another question of mine. I guess that leads into it. The playtesters. There's 2 credited. What version of the game did they play? When did they play it? Because there's so many theories with the playtesters. I'm super curious.
I'm going to be honest. The playtesters, they gave it like a few attempts, but they didn't really play.
Right. Okay.
I suppose they found the game too difficult themselves, and they didn't really. I think one of them got to like 5 AM, and he did say that it was quite difficult, and that like, especially with like Revenant Freddy, just the whole thing, you have to go all the way to the end of the aisle and deploy.
Right.
And it was like, a bit too difficult for them to do, and I don't blame them.
Did you make any tweaks from those playtesters, or like was there a harder version of the launch version before the playtesters?
I think it remained mostly the same. The only difference was originally you couldn't use So you'd be like at the end of the aisle and that. You wouldn't be able to use W and like A and D to go so D to go right and A to go left and D forward. That W forward. That wasn't originally in the game. You had to click like the and there's only specific areas where you could like use controls.
There you have it, folks. The playtesters didn't get very far in the game and thought it was super hard too. At the end of the day, it just seemed like the feedback from the two playtesters wasn't taken into consideration enough, and only some things, such as being able to move with WASD, were added thanks to said playtests. Next up, I was curious to know what was going on when RJack took the game down. The game was put up, and it was taken down in like 5 hours. What was going through your head at that time? Because a couple people were streaming it. I forget his name, but it's that guy with the puppet PFP, plays every game. He was streaming it, and he couldn't beat Night 1. And I thought it was really funny because he plays literally everything. And in the title, I can't beat Night 1. He just gave up. And then the game was taken down. What was going through your head all that time? Just tell me.
This is a bad combination of things. I was ill when I was releasing it. I'd only had like 4 hours of sleep, and I made a really stupid choice to unlist the page because I saw people saying that, and rightfully so, people were saying, oh, it's like, you're going to need to be Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
Understand the mechanics, and I was like, maybe putting the game out today wasn't such a great idea, and I just felt like, oh, I kind of messed up with the game, and just made a really poor choice to unlist it for like a day or so, and then I started reading the comments, and people were giving like good feedback and that, and I was like, yeah, that was just a bad choice to unlist the page. Like, that's not going to do anything, and it'd be better that people can still play the game and continue to give feedback and that.
Yeah, so you are patching the game currently, right? Because there is a patch for Part A. You are addressing some of the issues that people are having. And I think it's a learning experience for everybody involved, obviously, mostly you, but everybody involved. It's a learning experience. It's weird to say it, but I'm glad the game came out the way it did, because I mean, now not only is there this launch version that is a really tough challenge if someone wants to sink their teeth into it. It's like, it's there, but then you're also going to update over time and make a more, reasonable version for the average player.
Yeah, it's definitely a learning experience for me. Like, it just made me realize that if I ever do create any future games, I need to get like a proper team of people to help assist me with the project, because I think when you're doing something completely by yourself, isolated of other people, it's not a good way to approach the development. I think I was trying to think, Scott can do it, but I think he's been doing game development for way longer than I have, and he has a better understanding of it all. So with any future stuff, definitely got to try and reach out to more people and get them to test it and give me feedback prior to release.
Yeah, that's part of my reasoning with wanting to do a video on Post Shift 2 is that I think this whole thing is a good lesson for upcoming game developers and pretty much anyone that's interested in it to not make some of these mistakes, because these are mistakes that can happen in development, and sometimes people mess up. It's not the end of the world, and it can get fixed. It's important for people to know that. This answer was actually pretty interesting to me. Easily the part that stood out the most was that Scott Cawthon having minimal playtesting for his games was a bit of an inspiration for RJack to do the same. From a gameplay standpoint, a couple of the FNAF games are pretty meh, so maybe some more testing would have helped out for him as well. But for the most part, Scott is experienced enough to know what works and what really doesn't. It's always good as a game designer to get as much feedback as possible to avoid a situation like this one. Like I said in the interview, a lot of lessons can be learned from this that could be beneficial for any upcoming game devs. Next, I decided to ask RJack about some of the weird tutorial stuff in the game. So we're gonna get into some of the tutorial stuff, fun. So in the game, there are multiple mechanics that aren't explained, ? I'm not 100% sure. I have a couple examples here. The second monitor on Night 5, the mini one, I don't think that's on the tutorial, which is part of it because you need to do the tasks. And then, shoot, there are some other ones, but that was the main one I've written down. Was that just like outdated tutorials in the writing of the game, or what was that?
I think I sort of tried to explain it, but I don't think I definitely did.
Okay.
I didn't put enough information about the side panel and how you're supposed to utilize it. And hopefully with updates, I can try and make changes to the explanation of the side panel and all that.
Yeah, okay. And then, kind of related to that, on kind of like weird stuff with the tutorials, when you open up the first night 1, you're in that, like, the area. You're in the area where Baby spawns, and it has the tutorial for Baby. Baby isn't on night 1.
Yeah.
And there's a couple things like that. The Foxy that comes out of the pit or whatever, that is explained on night 2, and it isn't until night 3. Is that just like, oops, I didn't remove the tutorial there, or is that just kind of like, what was the thought process there?
I think I was thinking that I could explain mechanics of characters that aren't even on the night, but ideally that wasn't a good way to approach it. It should have been whatever character was active on that night should have the explanation, and then it should change on the next night when it's explaining the characters that are active on the other night. So yeah, it's probably it's just like an oversight on my part. I wasn't really structuring it in the best way possible.
Well, I think with night 6 as well, because night 6, when I first saw that tutorial, it's like 5 pages of like just straight text. I was like, holy shit, how is anybody supposed to remember that? How is anyone supposed to like figure this all out? But then I actually, when I was in the stream with Phil, I realized it's segmented, right? It's segmented, and I feel like a better way to approach that would have been like, here's the tutorial for the first segment. You beat it, then you unlock the next tutorial, kind of thing. Because when you see it all, it's like, what the fuck am I doing? It's like so much to look at.
It's too much information. There needs to be hopefully I can try and figure out a better way of just improving that tutorial. Originally I was thinking of there's going to be like the other tutorials where it's part of the night and you have to press X to disable turn off the hints and then start it. But I think it was just trying to thinking of a way of going from one set of characters to another in the actual tutorial itself. So I guess maybe you're like the idea of unlocking the next sort of set of tutorials might be a good way. I don't know. I feel like maybe I was trying to pack in too much into one night, and it became so confusing that even I didn't know how to like approach explaining the mechanics and stuff in the best way possible.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when you're in the scenario that you were in, where you're kind of like making this game and it's your game, not many people are playtesting it, you're gonna get in that mindset where you're like, this is fine, like, this is reasonable, but I mean, obviously, it's a lot for someone just going in looking at it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so one last thing about the tutorials. Did you worry? Because I'm not super familiar with Post Shift 1. I've seen bits and pieces of it after the fact. I'm pretty sure one of the things in Post Shift 1 has kind of like the same page tutorial layout, but it's 1 page instead of 5. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think that might be the night. I think that's the night 6 tutorial.
Okay, so
it's similar to the night 5.
So the long tutorials are kind of a staple to Post Shift, as I've kind of pieced together coming from looking at that first one. So did you worry at all during development of Post Shift 2 that the amount of tutorials you're kind of just like shoving in the player's face would be too much, or were you really in that mindset where like, this is reasonable because you were making it?
I did worry that it would be too much. I think, if we've got to be 50-50 on that, I was thinking, oh yeah, this will be fine. Like, people will be able to adapt to it. But then, obviously that is nowhere near the case. Like I can realise that now, and hopefully I just try and take notes from this and try it. Make sure that if I ever do things like tutorials in future projects, that I make sure that it's a lot more usable.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, I ended it off with a couple miscellaneous things about the game itself. This one someone asked, I think. I put it down because I think people will be curious about it, but the answer is probably very obvious, so you don't have to linger on this one. But why use Click Team for a game like this that's so big that it had to be split into 2 parts?
Just a limit in my knowledge of coding. Ideally, I definitely need to try and learn a new engine, especially for this type of game. It's because I really just only know.
That's what I thought the answer would be. I assumed you just only knew Click Team. Fair enough. Okay, this is a personal pet theory of mine, and I'm pretty sure it's wrong, but I'm still gonna ask it because I'm curious as fuck. So, there's a trailer from like 2 years ago that shows multiple of the gameplay styles, but when I was playing through nights 1 through 3, it felt to me like a 6-night game compressed into 3 nights. Like, the difficulty, that's how it felt, because there's so many animatronics on night 1, night 2, and night 3. It feels like it was supposed to be strung across 6. Was that ever the case, or is that just kind of like, what was that all about?
I think the whole like IO1 thing was supposed to be a large majority of the game, but then I don't know, I felt like I had to challenge myself and create multiple segments that would like change the gameplay differently. Yeah, I think it's just a case of like I just wanted there to be more content than just the player being in one place. Obviously, there came a lot of complications with doing it.
Yeah, so you're working on patches for the game. What are things that you have in mind that you want to patch? And also, if you want to talk about Part C a bit, because I've heard something about that. I'm not 100% sure what that is. So
with patches, the tutorials need to be vastly improved. I think one of the simplest things to do would be to condense a lot of the information, but I feel like there needs to be a different approach to that. I just need to try and figure that out. The RNG, of course, that needs to be changed. It's just too much for the player to deal with. It just needs to be slower, and I think part of the problem is when like 4 animatronics become active at the same time. It's just too much for the player to deal with. Animation speeds, that's definitely something that needs to be changed as well. I don't know, there's definitely more stuff, but I can't think of it on the top of my head right now. But yeah, mainly just the explanation of mechanics and just the RNG and all that kind of stuff. The balancing needs to be changed.
okay, and then what is Part C about?
Yeah, don't know for sure if I'm definitely gonna do Part C because of how many issues the core game has itself. But the idea of Part C was that it would take place inside the house.
Oh.
And it would sort of be somewhat akin to 5 Nights at Freddy's 4.
All right, cool. Well, that's pretty much it for my questions. If you have anything else you want to say before we wrap up here.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is just developers, just take notes from the mistakes I've made and try your best to avoid them. And if you ever get into kind of problems that I've got into, just try and make sure you can adapt to the situation and make the necessary changes to your project.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for talking with me, dude. And that was my interview with Arjack. Hopefully some of the questions you had were answered here, and thanks to Arjack for actually agreeing to do this interview with me. Patches are already slowly but surely coming out, so hopefully in a year's time, the game will be in a much more balanced and playable state. Massive props to anyone who can beat the launch version. That is no easy task. Links to everybody who made this video possible will be in the description. So what did we learn today, everyone? Listen to your playtesters.